I was working with the Kellogg Company. They were back in 1995. I joined them, and they were headquartered in Manchester, which is my hometown. So that's where I'm from. And I joined there after completing my accountancy training. And I worked through the ranks of the various finance functions there. And then in 2005, the company decided to relocate its European headquarters into Dublin.
Very good.
So myself and my family moved over here at that time, and we've been here ever since. I continued my career there. I was in senior management for financial planning and analysis, so doing budgeting, analysing results, providing information to the board. And I guess what happened to me round about the early 2010s, I had a few little things that happened to me that kind of gave me a bit more perspective on life. I don't mind telling people about this. I had a bit of a health crisis or a health scare, let's say. And actually I found myself after a regular health check, I found myself in one of those big donut MRI scanners lying there whilst they were checking out my insides. And that was pretty scary. And if I look back at that time, I admit I wasn't kind of in the best physical shape at that time. I probably let the comfort of a comfortable job and a comfortable life get the better of me. And so I wasn't in the best shape. As it happens, that health scare was a bit of a false alarm, but it certainly gave me a wake-up call that I needed to start looking after myself a bit more. So that was the first thing that happened to me. Second thing that happened to me, and it's hard to know whether any of these things are connected, but my relationship broke down, and in 2013 I ended up getting divorced. So that was a bit of a shock to my system. And then maybe again, as a result of all these things happening in the following year, my career started going on a bit of a wobble, and I started thinking about whether I was in the right place and whether this was the right place for me to be. And in the end, I ended up leaving the Kellogg Company, and I started my second part of my journey of my career and trained as an executive coach and started my own practice. And that's where you find me here today. I specialize in working with finance professionals because that's the world that I know, and helping them with their various career issues, with their career crossroads, with work-life balance issues, maybe even with personal identity issues, some people wondering who they are when they reach that time in their life. So that's a very, very quick summary of how I came to be sat here today.
Very good. And actually, I can empathize with you, Neil, because to an extent, because I was also an accountant for 20 odd years myself. And now I'm doing career coaching, and I enjoy it, and the professional speaking also, which I love. It's a second career, obviously.
Yeah.
But, I think what you have to realize is that, we all had good times in accountancy, both of us did, but there were some difficult times, and the difficult times actually make you a better person and make you a better executive and leadership coach in the longer run, because you've been through the mill, and therefore you can empathize in turn with your clients and your prospects. So fair play to you.
Absolutely. The reality is, when I look back on that career, it was a fantastic company to work for, and still is. And I still know people there, and I've got many, many long-term friends and connections coming out of my time there. And I don't really regret any of it at all. And I think that what I want to try and help people who might be finding themselves in difficult times, there are various alternatives of ways that you can go when you do reach that crossroads, including staying where you are and finding a way to make it work for you.
Yeah, I know what you're saying there. What were you like as a child, may I ask?
As a child, gosh, I suppose we're talking a long time ago, but I grew up, I love football. So I used to play football all the time. I had a ball with me all the time. And every time as soon as we finished school, me and a handful of friends, we'd go to the fields behind one of my friends' houses, and we'd kick a ball around until we were told to come in. So there was that side of my life, but I was also a bit of a geek as well. And I remember we had a BBC Micro at home, and I used to love spending time on the computer as well. And maybe that's where I got my affinity with numbers and with logic, by spending many hours on the computer as well in my bedroom. So that's mentioning a BBC Micro would probably age me a little bit.
Well, not to worry. I remember I was in intercert, which is equivalent of O levels, when I put my first hands or fingers on a computer in school. I remember as well, doing basic programming. I loved it. It was a great introduction to computer
They had
science.
Commodore 64s at my school, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, and the computers are so big in those days compared to what we have nowadays. Yeah, and their lifespan was short enough because they didn't have solid state hard disks. They were, those ones read-write heads on them that could wear out pretty quickly. Yeah, indeed. So moving on from that, tell me, what can we do if someone tries to annoy you or make you angry?
So you are referring to one of my recent videos, I suppose. So I put a lot of content out on LinkedIn nowadays. I've found my way to making these short videos that I produce twice a week generally, and I have great fun doing those and giving these kinds of little tips. So the one that I did about when people are annoying you, this is something that's really powerful to get your head around. If when you do feel annoyed or you feel angry, then the first thing to do is realize that this feeling is coming from inside yourself, and it's not what the person who's doing something to you is causing. You're causing it within yourself by the way that you're reacting. And once you realize that is the kind of key to unlocking being able to deal with those feelings and handle them, and be able to calm those feelings and be able to react in a more appropriate way, rather than reacting angrily or reacting with annoyance. Because when we do react in that way, when we do feel those strong emotions and react to them, that's when the relationships can break down and things can escalate. Whereas it's a really powerful skill to be able to de-escalate those situations by thinking to yourself, hang on, why am I getting annoyed about this? What is it about this situation that is upsetting me? And how can I react in a different way? And just taking that moment to go through those thoughts diffuses the situation within yourself, and then you can diffuse the situation outwardly and deal with the person or the situation in a much calmer and more appropriate and a much more beneficial manner, let's say.
Great answer. So effectively what you're saying there, Nigel, is don't be so impulsive. Take a deep breath. Think about what the person is saying to you. There could be some merit in what they're saying. And if there is, take on board that message and deal with it. If on the other hand, you feel they're criticizing you, it's best to think of your answer, practice it in your own mind before you reply, because the worst thing you can do is to react on the spot. Then that person realizes you're upset and they have actually won the argument in that situation.
One of the things I say to my clients, and I say this in all situations, two very simple words: slow down. And because we're all in such a hurry to get things done, we're all in such a hurry to respond, to react, to show how clever we are, to show how impressive we are, to show how much we know. And if we can just slow down a moment and realize that maybe that's not the best way to approach those situations, we can come up with much more beneficial outcomes.
Tell me, how do you cope when your normal routine is disrupted?
That's a very good question as well, and very appropriate. I think in modern life, our routines are very, very frequently disrupted. One thing to start off by saying is, do you actually have a routine that you are trying to follow in order to live your life and go through your days? And that's something that I really recommend to people, is that they do try and build routine into their life, to build habits into their life, which gives you a much firmer foundation for being able to deal with when the unexpected happens and your routines get disrupted, like you said. So the step one would be, have a routine, have a habit in the first place that is there to be disrupted. And then if that habit, those routines are strongly embedded, then when something comes along to knock you off your pattern, then you can easily revert back to it when you've dealt with whatever that situation is. So the trying to resist when the interruptions happen can take up a lot of energy and can often cause a lot of pain and a lot of suffering. So allowing the interruption to happen, allowing and going with the flow and accepting what has happened, dealing with it in the appropriate manner, and then coming back to your routines, your foundation that keeps you on a solid base. That would be my approach to dealing with those kinds of situations.
Question for you, Neil. Are you a person who likes structure around you, or would you be like myself? I like to keep my options open. The least amount of structure for me, the better. What type of person are you in that regard?
That's certainly an interesting question for me, because I guess my natural affinity, or maybe what I thought, the kind of person that I thought I was, would be someone who would like that structure around me. And probably I grew up with that, and certainly through the early part of my career, was always very, very structured. And I built a lot of structure around my working existence, let's say. And I guess maybe as I've matured and I've grown up, I've started to realize that I can allow myself a little bit more leeway, a little bit more flexibility, and a little bit more spontaneity in the way that I deal with things. And once I realized that that was something that I was more comfortable with, maybe that's part of what drew me to changing career and giving myself a little bit more freedom to allow that part of me to come out. So that's something that I found certainly in the last 6 or 7 years, is that more looser, more freer side of me has come out a bit more in the way that I work and in my career, which is a lot more flexible. I'm my own boss. I do things pretty much when I like, and I allow myself to have that freedom, which has certainly enhanced the quality of my life in all aspects since I've been doing that. However, I still want to say that I still have that part of me that likes that structure. And so the scaffolding that I build around my days and around my working life, and also my personal life, that scaffolding is still there, but it's just a little bit looser, that allows me to flex and be able to change direction when the need arises.
Just to go a bit deeper into this topic, Neil, when you were working with the Kellogg company, obviously you were under pressure to meet deadlines for budgets, month-end accounts. You were under pressure to answer questions to senior management, for example, where they wanted more detail on a particular cost variance or sales variance. Did you find that you had to put a lot of energy into doing your work and ensuring that you met those deadlines?
The brief answer is yes. The longer answer is, you mentioned energy, and energy is really a powerful thing. And I think that when people can become aware of their energy and where it's going, how they're using it and how they're creating it, can be a really powerful thing. So when I look back on those days, and I was laughing because some of the terms you're using there, that's all dragging me back into the past, which is fine, because it was a big part of my life for a long time. But absolutely, all those things, the monthly routines, the quarterly routines, quarterly reporting we had to do, the ad hoc requests for information, that was all my energy was going into those. I guess back then that was my identity. I was the finance manager in Kellogg's, working in the UK function and then into the European functions, and that was who I was. And so so all my energy was going into that, and there wasn't much energy left for some of the other things. And I think that's probably because I wasn't too much aware of how much energy was going into that to be able to develop the other parts of my life and of my existence and of my identity, that I, at a certain point, all those doubts came into me. I thought, is this the right thing for me? So absolutely, when I was there, it was 90% of the energy was going into being sat at that desk, looking at the spreadsheets, looking at the systems, doing all that analysis. And honestly, I was happy doing it because that's kind of who I thought I was. And so I was there, and it was the right thing to do, and I was happy doing it. And I thought, this is my job. I'm being well paid to do this. So this is who I am. And I probably wasn't aware of the consequences of putting all that energy in one direction.
And again, I can empathize with you in that regard, because I was a person who put long hours into my work. And again, like yourself, I loved the commercial analysis work, doing all the budgets, the forecast, the monthly accounts. And I put enormous amount of energy into my work. And when the weekend came, I was spending my time trying to recharge the batteries. I had no social life as such beyond work. So I can empathize with you in that regard. And effectively what happened in my case was I ignored my compulsory, professional development. Now with SEMA, it's not mandatory that you do so many hours a year. It's more flexible in terms of your own requirements. So I met my requirements, but I was doing CPD that really was of no benefit to me at the time in the longer term. And now I hardly recognize the old John, to put it lightly. Yeah. Explain the significance of Jim Rohn's statement, you become the average of the 5 people you spend most time with.
This is another great phrase. I mean, Jim Rohn was a great leadership professional, and a lot of wisdom came out of his mouth. This is one that I actually hear about this in various guises all the time now, and it's a really powerful thing. It's something that I find people very reluctant to act upon because the consequences can be quite dramatic for some people. But what we're talking about here is that the people who you surround yourself with, your professional circles and your social circles, they will have an influence on you that you cannot fight against that influence. So the people who you are surrounding yourself with, you will gravitate to become like them. They will also in turn gravitate to become a little bit like you as well. So you'll be, and you end up becoming the average of those 5 people, whether it's 5 people, 6, 10, we don't know. But the principle is there that when you're surrounding yourself with people and spending time with them, they will have an influence on you. You will have an influence of them. And I'm going to come back to the word energy as well. The energy that they have will have an influence on you, and your energy will have an influence on them. So when you look around yourself and you think about, well, what kind of person do I want to become, or who do I want to grow into? And I believe that we're always growing, even at your and my part of life. We're still growing, we're still becoming, and we're still changing. If we think about the kind of people that we want to become, we need to be careful then and mindful about the people who we are hanging around with and spending time with, because are they the kind of people who we want to become? Because we will become behind them. If you have a particular ambition to become a different kind of person, you will have to make changes to your habits, to your routines, so that you are able to spend more time with the kind of people that you do want to become, rather than people who might be very happy with their existence and not be in the mindset of growing and growth and developing and becoming a better person. And even though these people might be your best friends, they might be your family, there's a real strong strategy to be able to just back away from those people in a little bit to bring more different kinds of people into your life. That's the kind of piece that is quite unpalatable for some people. And so I often advise people that we're not talking about dramatic changes here. We're not talking about necessarily cutting out your best friend from your life just because they are doing some stuff that you don't want to get involved in, but just backing away and bringing different kinds of people into your life so that you can get some of that energy that you want out of them and give that energy to them as well. So it's a really powerful concept to be aware of, and the first step is always becoming aware of that, and then you can make those decisions, sometimes difficult decisions, about how you then want to transform yourself and transform your social circles, transform your professional circles even, in order to become the person that you want to be. And that's something that I always, very often will talk to my clients about, is what kind of person do you want to be? And then we can work towards what are the steps that we need to take to get you there. And if that means hanging around with different kinds of people, then we work on that.
I know what you're saying there, Neil, and it's great advice that you're giving your clients, because if you want to become a professional speaker, for example, you have to go out there and find people in networks, in professional speaking networks, that you want to aspire to be like, not to copy, but to learn from. And you have to invite yourself or get yourself in with those people in their networks and learn from them. And along your journey, you're going to find people who are going to be jealous of you, and they will try to drag you back down. And it's very important to be aware of these people, and as you say, to manage your relationship with them effectively. Yeah. Keep it professional. Don't get involved in any personal animosity, and don't let them drag you back down. So it's very important to be mindful of the need to grow, but also at the same time, be mindful of the need of other people who want to drag you back down.
Absolutely.
And keep a bit of distance from those people.
Yeah. Just on that, John, if I can talk about practicing what I preach in that sense. So a couple of the changes that I would have made to my own, let's say, social stroke professional circle. A few years back, I joined Toastmasters to help me to be exposed to people who wanted to grow and wanted to become more confident about speaking. And this year, I'm actually the club president of my Toastmasters club. And the other thing as I've done is, because I wanted to become a coach and learn about coaching, so I've inserted myself into coaching circles as well. And so I'm now operating on the administrative council of the EMCC here in Ireland as well. So that's exposing me and increasing my network of fellow coaches and learning from them and being exposed to that kind of energy. So those are the things that I have done in recent years in order to change those people who I spend time with. Very good.
Excellent. And good luck with your Toastmasters career and also your networking within the EMCC. Explain why we should not let circumstances dictate how we feel, think, and behave.
This is, again, lots of people will talk about this concept in different ways, but this is all about understanding what you can control and what you can influence and what you can't control. That circle of influence idea, or I think Simon Sinek in his Start With Why TED Talk talks about the golden circle of what we can do and the purposes behind it. So for me, it's being very, very aware of what those circumstances, can we control them? Can we influence them, or are they beyond our control? If things are happening that are beyond our control, that's the time to step back, take a deep breath and say, there's nothing I can do about this. So I mustn't allow myself to react to it, and I mustn't allow myself to give energy to that situation. What I need to do is bring that energy back into myself and think about, how can I react to that situation? What are the things that I can do in order to make these circumstances work as best as they can for me? So again, we're coming back to the same thing about that idea of slowing down, taking a breath, engaging the right parts of our brain to be able to make the best decisions, the best choices that allow us to move forward when circumstances have worked against us.
Great answer. And thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Explain, why is it important to develop the power of withholding judgment?
Okay, this is something that I wrote about a while ago now. This came out of my coach training, and as coaches we're trained to always withhold judgment, always to hold our clients in the highest regard and assume positive intent for the actions that they are taking. And by doing that, that allows us to approach working with our clients in a more open manner and a more collaborative manner. So if you step outside the coaching world, then this idea of withholding judgment can again be powerful in all our relationships. So we have our coaching relationships that are very important to coaches, and then we take that idea of withholding judgment outside of our relationships, to our friends, to our family. And again, that idea of withholding judgment, of hearing, of listening to somebody tell you something that they did, something that happened. And again, I come back to the two-word phrase, slow down. Think about what's being said. Think about all the infinite possibilities of the stories that are behind what has happened, and allow that person to tell their story. What's happening when we are judging is we are creating our own story in our own head about what has happened in front of us, when we might not even have been there, or we don't really understand the background. But our natural instinct is to create a story, create our own understanding of what actually happened. If we can hold back from that and then allow the full story to come out from the other person's perspective, in that way we can make a much better assessment of what's happened. And then again, it comes back to making better choices, making better decisions about how we react, what we say next, and allow the relationship to continue to grow rather than the relationship to break down when we judge people. You're a bad person for doing that. You're a careless person for doing that. You're a lazy person because you didn't get out of bed on time. We don't know the story. When we judge, we make those assumptions that can be damaging. When we withhold that judgment, we can allow the full situation to become apparent and make better decisions.
So effectively what you're saying there is, particularly with your coaching clients and prospects, that you have to allow them to tell their story. The last thing you want to do is to have in your own mind your version of their story, and you want them to come up with possible solutions to issues they're faced with. And the way to do that is to keep probing them with questions rather than giving them answers or solutions that are not really applicable. So the most important thing is to actively listen and ask relevant questions to get more detail, and then allow your client or prospect to find their own solution.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the kind of the fundamentals of how coaching works. And it is a tough skill to be able to withhold that judgment, to be able to withhold those solutions that you think are right for your client, but you have to allow them to come to their own conclusions, because even when you have the best, smartest answer in the world, they've not come from the same place that you have come from. So your amazing solution will possibly not be correct for them, and you might force them into something that actually doesn't work for them. So it's really powerful skill that coaches have to develop to be able to hold back from that, continue probing, like you say, continue asking questions, continue helping the client to understand their own situation and to understand themselves, so that they can then see, I know what the right thing to do is next. And they, because they've come up with that themselves, they will follow through and do that.
And of course, the danger is if you try to force your solution on your client, they're a different person, they have a different way of dealing with life and issues and stress, and you only create more doubt and problems for them in their own minds.
Yes, I always say to my friends as well as my colleagues that if you want to take the chance of giving somebody some advice, then you have to be prepared for them to ignore it completely.
Very good, very good. I agree with that. Explain why it is important to subdue your ego, let go of the need to be right, and open yourself to other possibilities.
This is one of the most powerful things that I see in senior executives that I've worked with. They've got to their positions of power because they are smart and they are clever and they are powerful and they can get things done and they achieve results. And that's they build their identity around that. But as you grow and become more senior in organizations, we have to relinquish some of that drive to produce results in order to allow people who are working for us to grow. So it's that idea of being right, of always having the right answer, of always having the solution to any problem that is presented to us. That by having that, you're not allowing the people around you to grow and develop. So I will work with clients to encourage them to hold back on having the answers, hold back on appearing to be the smartest person in the room, to hold back on being the hero that they were all throughout their career, which is why they've got to where they are. And so now it's time to allow somebody else to have the right answer, someone else to come up with a solution, allow someone else to be the hero. And that all that is encompassing in letting go of that ego. And then when they can do that, that is how they become a leader. And that is how being a leader is about bringing the people up with you, getting the best out of them, getting them to follow you by allowing them to show what they can do. And that's something that I find senior executives sometimes have difficulty grasping that concept, because they know what they've done so far and how it's got them to where they are. But I'll call to mind the famous phrase from Marshall Goldsmith in his book, "What got you here won't get you there." And this is exactly the kind of thing he's talking about.
Question for you, Neil. Hopefully this statement resonates with you. Becoming is better than being.
That's a nice one. I'm not sure. I've not sure I've heard that before, but it immediately brings an image to mind. And to me, this is about growth versus stagnation. And I mentioned earlier in the conversation about we're always growing, even at our stage in life. We're always should be trying to grow, trying to learn, trying to improve, trying to develop and becoming better versions of ourselves. There's a phrase that if you become 1% better every day, then in a year's time, you'll be, I'm not sure what the number is, but you'll be much, much better person in any particular skill. And I talk about I'm thinking a lot about my identity, the kind of person that I want to be. And one of the things that I say to myself is that I'm a student, which is the embodiment of always learning, always listening, always trying to improve myself. So that's how I encapsulate that idea of becoming is better than being.
Great answer. I love that answer, actually. You're a student. I think we're a student of life, to be honest.
Absolutely.
Always learning, always developing, always taking on board new ideas and developing new solutions for clients. It's a great way to look at life. What do you think is the future for executive and leadership coaches?
It's a very fast-growing industry. There are more coaches going through training all the time. So there is certainly there is a supply. There's a plentiful supply of coaches coming into the industry to help executives to develop and grow. And for me, this is part of the growth of society and the growth of industry and the growth of business in Ireland and also across the world. As our economy grows, and hopefully we'll get back into growth and get back into a positive direction that the economy is moving, we're going to need our organizations, our businesses to become more productive, to become more efficient, to have less waste. And one of the things that I think is that we can imagine waste in a manufacturing process, but can we imagine waste in a leadership process? For me, I imagine waste as the egos of our leaders, the endless meetings that our executive boards hold, where things don't get done, where decisions don't get made. So those kinds of concepts, if we as coaches can step into that world and help our leaders to become more effective, to become more efficient in their meetings, to allow themselves to let go of their egos, to allow the talent that they have in their businesses to come forward and to grow and come up, rather than them providing all the answers themselves. If we can help our leaders to do more of that, that is going to facilitate the growth in our economies that we're going to need moving into the future, into the decades to come. Efficiency, effectiveness.
It's a very in-depth answer. And I think what you're saying there is we need to develop the knowledge economy here in Ireland. And also, I think when executives get to the senior leadership team, they have to stop seeing the people around them as being a threat to them and actually take on board those people's need for development and allow them to flourish and to come up with their own solutions. The worst thing you can do in any organization is have a senior management team that's very top down, that drives talent out the door because they don't feel they're involved enough in projects, in making decisions, in coming up with solutions to issues. Yeah, I think that's a very good analysis of the future for coaching.
A different way of looking at that, which might be more a phrase that might be more familiar to people, is this concept of office politics. Yeah. Now, for me, office politics is everywhere, but office politics to me is just office relationships. So it's about building those relationships in the right way and allowing them to become more efficient and more effective. And again, that concept of waste. So the traditional idea of office politics, where relationships are top down, you have to do this my way, this is the way we've always done things, all those kinds of things, those are the wastage that we have. And I like the phrase you use, the knowledge economy, because this is where people are using their leadership skills, using their knowledge to drive businesses, to run businesses, to get things done. And if we can become more efficient in that, eliminate the waste that traditional office politics can create, then we can become more effective.
3 remarkable things I've taken away from today's interview are: firstly, always step back if you're put under pressure. Never be impulsive with an answer. Step back and think about what you're going to say and what the other person is saying before you respond. The worst thing you can do is respond in anger to anybody. If they see that you're upset, they have won. Secondly, every day is a day to develop or learn a new skill. And thirdly, no matter what your profession is in life, think about your career and where you want to go next. There's always an opportunity to develop a new second career. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the audience before I let you go, Neil?
Not too much, John. It's been a real pleasure. I really enjoyed your questions, and you've really made me think about all the stuff that I have been working on myself and on my coaching skills and my coaching practice over the last 5 or 6 years. So it's been a really interesting experience for me. And if any of your audience want to get in touch or follow me, then you can find me on LinkedIn, Neil Gabbie. I have a YouTube channel, NG Leadership, and all my videos and little snippets of wisdom go up on that site regularly. And if you actually do want to get in touch with me, then you can go to my website, neilgabbie.com, and drop me a message from there, and I'd be delighted to hear from anyone. Any questions, any advice people looking for. When I give advice, I don't expect anybody to take it, as I said earlier, and I'd be happy to hear from them. And I'd like to once again thank you, John, for inviting me to do this.
And on that note, we'll bring today's show to an end. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you.